sometimes I forgot the amount of product the consumers have in their bathroom. And it's just insane. Like they have like walls.
Yes.
Walls.
I'm very guilty of that. I smiled because I was like, oh God. The beauty industry is no stranger to trends. But in 2025, the real challenge isn't spotting them, it's cutting through the noise. From TikTok-fueled micro-movements to AI-generated keyword clouds, today's brands are swimming in data, but still thirsty for real insight. So how do we go beyond the hype and actually detect the micro-trends that matter? How can emerging tech, especially AI, become a tool, not a crutch, for innovation? And once you've spotted something promising, how do you translate it into a product that feels fresh, but still aligns with your brand's DNA? To help us navigate this, we're joined by Marta Ponzone, the founder of Terra Innovation Studio, where she helps beauty brands decode emerging signals and microtrends, transforming them into strategic, product-driven insights. With over a decade of experience working across LVMH perfumes and cosmetics and the Estee Lauder companies, Marta has consulted for iconic names like Dior, Guerlain, Louis Vuitton, Clinique, and La Mer. She's advised on everything from R&D concept development and claim strategy to formulation innovation, bridging the gap between market intelligence and product creation. Marta joins us to explore how brands, big and small, can better detect trends, leverage AI without losing human touch, and build the kind of innovation pipelines that don't just react to the market, but shape it. Let's dig in. Hi, Marta. Thank you for joining.
Hi, Jennifer. Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Great. As a start, I think it would be great if we could really talk and define microtrend and go a little deeper in why should beauty brands care about microtrends.
Yeah, when we talk about trends in beauty, we usually hear about those macro trends. So those let's say big long-term shifts in culture, lifestyle, and technology that are reshaping the industry. Let's say wellness-driven beauty or Gen Alpha trends or AI and personalization, but on your day-to-day life as a R&D professional or PD professional, you cannot use them. They are not actionable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I focus in my work is micro trends. And micro trends are much more smaller, more specific signals that often emerge from niche communities or early consumer behavior, and they move really quickly within a category or a subcategory. So micro trends really help you spot product opportunity earlier before the rest of the market and before the category becomes saturated. And when we talk about micro trends, it's important also to differentiate between TikTok trends. So those, let's say, short-lived aesthetic trends and what is actually going and happening underneath the surface at the product level.
And can you give an example of, let's say, a micro trend in that greater aspect you were talking about, like wellness, right? Or clean beauty, right? If that's the broader macro category, what would a micro trend be beneath that?
Yeah. So if that is the macro trends, then what we will say in the micro trends will actually be how do you translate this clean, let's say clean trends within the skincare category, right? So within, let's say, per benefit. So it can be for how does it translate for hydration or well aging or brightening? So something that I'm seeing now, which is pretty cool, is the fact that for me, the next thing that is going to happen in clean is the biotech. Yeah. So we have seen a lot of claims around it. For instance, a really cool brand that is emerging is Dane that I really love. And they are doing kind of like putting claims around biotech actives and the percentage even of biotech ingredients.
Nice. And can you share an example of a micro trend that maybe evolved into a dominant industry trend?
Totally. Yeah, I can share a few examples. So the first one is the tubing mascara in the US. So, tubing mascara is the technology that comes out in tubes and it doesn't melt or, it's much more gentle and it can be removed on warm water. So this technology isn't new in the US. The first one to brought this into the US was actually Kevin O'Quan in early 20s and also Kiss Me Mascara or Blink. They were the first one to introduce it into the market, but it was actually in the let's say in the pro makeup artists or pro communities. And this technology has been in Asia a major thing, right? In Japan, in Korea, everyone is using it. And what is changing today, because this is big now in the US, what is changing today is the fact that today consumers are wanting to have cleaner formula, smudge-proof wear, no hassle removal, in particular Gen Z.
Yeah.
They are sensitive about, eye and clean alternative. And since a few weeks, actually, there has been Too Faced who launched the ribbon wrapped lash mascara. And Too Faced Better Than Sex is the #1 best-selling mascara in the US. So this is already huge, right? And also Tarte, they launched their tubing lash primer. So this is definitely something that it was micro in the pro makeup community that now is mainstream.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I hadn't even really heard of that phrase when it came to mascara, but that is predominantly what all of the mascara is now, right? Is that quote unquote tubing mascara. And so now it's just a mainstay. That's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. For instance, in skincare, if I can add another one, is actually something related to skin barrier repair. Everyone is talking about it now.
Yeah.
But it was in niche community in the, let's say, dermatology cycles. And now indie brands and also actually established brands are championing ingredients like ceramide, niacinamide, or Centella asiatica. And actually, the first one who brought that into the mainstream was Dr. Jart. And now we've seen messaging around skin barrier repair everywhere. And yeah, and also even the makeup prep, I've seen some indie brands, POV, Point of View, they just launched from makeup artists, and it's all their messaging and claim is actually around skin barrier repair for prepping skin for makeup.
Yeah. Great. So, there is obviously a lot of information that brands can leverage and use. But I think the art really is in understanding or detecting meaningful data and translating it into products. And so, in an industry that seems to be drowning in trends, how do you cut through that noise as a brand?
Totally. There is way too much noise out there. I just read an article about Gen Z saying that they are fed up of all the fashion trends and beauty trends. It's an overwhelming landscape. I've estimated 150K active SKU in skincare and beauty in the US only, and 1,500 new beauty brands launching each year in the US. So this is huge, right? And even like indie brands, it's such a driving force today. It's 32% of all the US market, with this kind of like 30 billion in revenue when you add all the indie brands. So it's insane. There is a lot going on. So how can you do that? And for me, it's definitely try to create the category level product intelligence that you have to understand from all that noise. And just to be honest, it's a full-time job because you're looking at like all the product out there, taking a product first approach, and you go into that kind of like subcategories. So let's say if it's makeup, we're going to look into a liquid foundation. And if it's in skincare, we will go for the benefit, like well aging, brightening, hydration, whatever.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? Is that you actually track like an enormous amount of product. For instance, now I'm analyzing and tracking like 500 makeup launches within the US only, coming from indie brands and startups. So that's definitely huge. But what we are looking at, and I'm looking at, is definitely seeing what is bubbling up in that category.
When you say bubbling up and tracking, what are you tracking when you're looking at these launches?
So I would look at formulas, first of all, like new formulas in terms of sensoriality, texture, ingredient, and claims. And I'm asking myself, like, what's truly new in here, what's replicable, what's scalable, and interpret them with this product perspective approach.
Great. And in any of the research that you're doing too, do you account for sales or estimated sales, or is it more of a perception? So a brand launches and you see that there are multiple, let's say magazines or websites that are promoting it. We know that I didn't know this for a while and I feel dumb, but a lot of times those promotions within certain, venues, websites, magazines, they're paid, right? They're paid. So you pay to have a product promoted. And so it's really not a true testament to like, oh, this is great innovation. So when a product does launch and, you're starting to see like, oh, this is new, but it may not be talked about a lot, how do you balance kind of that information that you can track?
Yeah, totally. I feel like if it's already everywhere
Mm-hmm.
and you can see it everywhere online or in magazine, for me, it's already mainstream. So, it's not there when I'm tracking the micro trends because those are really smaller emerging signals. And so it's rare that I discover something that is already everywhere. But when I'm saying things everywhere, this is where it's validated the fact that these trends is coming in the mainstream now. And so it's great to have that too as a proof of, okay, I was thinking about this. This is actually happening. It's huge. And it's great. But it's definitely something that you can spot in the indie brands and the startup community. So they don't have the same power as established brand in terms of PR or communication or marketing. So it's much more a smaller things that you have to detect.
Yeah. And are there ever times when, you've said, oh, well, I knew that was coming, but even having something be a mainstream trend, you can take information from that knowing the next logical step, right? Where it's like, okay, this is a trend, but what I'm seeing now is this area that it's not covering, which is going to become apparent because everybody's using it. So can these, this micro trend even shift from like, okay, you have a micro trend, it becomes mainstream macro, but that even provides information in an area for a micro trend to emerge?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you are 100% right. It really depends how the market is shifting. So it's always great to see also what is huge and mainstream now to detect something that is going to come up after, right? I mentioned the clean with the biotech. This is definitely something that we can see as clean being the macro and micro being the biotech coming as the next big thing. In particular, since Debut Biotech has just launched a new carmine, completely vegan. They had like 10 million into the R&D for 4 years, so you can see the R&D behind, and this is something definitely that you can see by adding to your lens not only what is mainstream, what is indie, what is startup, what is coming from the consumers also perspective and the pros, as well as, of course, the R&D and the technology. And so you mix all of it.
And AI has changed a lot of different industries, but I'm interested to hear ways in which AI has changed how brands are approaching trend forecasting.
For me, yeah, AI has completely changed how brand gather and process trained data. AI can actually, analyze million of that data points in second, coming from, let's say, TikTok or Instagram, Sephora reviews, Google search trends, consumer reviews, you name it. And this has for sure dramatically trained. This has increased.
It's okay.
So it has increased the speed and volume of the trend detection, right? So now you can see what is happening with a consumer eye by analyzing the consumer reviews and the consumer insight. But this for me is the only, let's say, the first level, the first layer.
And so if this is the first layer, what are the areas in which you think that AI could possibly go and add value to both market research and product innovation, and then where it does fall short?
Yeah, so totally. For me, AI can be great to actually see what's trending with a consumer eye. Because as I mentioned, you can see and analyze all the reviews on different platforms on a global level in seconds, right? They can pull out reports really quickly. I've also seen like Boots leverage it for their less reports, which is great, by the way. So there are great reports on, using AI and pulling like consumer data. But for me, what is missing now, and something that AI cannot do, is telling you whatever the trends is actually usable in your product pipeline, but also AI cannot understand the formulation feasibility or the competitive saturation or the brand positioning, or if this is something really innovative or if it's just another way of noise. And for me, what is actually missing now with AI is the texture and the sensorial feel, right? Because since we're working in beauty, it's such a sensorial and intuitive industry, and for me, I cannot test, and it's not going to test any product anytime soon, right? And so you have to combine data coming from those AI reports with the consumer eye, while adding also this real world product testing, competitive benchmark, and let's say contextual expertise.
Yeah. Sensory science is very interesting. And, I guess, when you're using some of these tools, like maybe social media listening, in integration into AI, it's really hard to get quantitative data for sensorial, right? There's a lot of different adjectives that people use that have different meaning, and I could see where there's a very strong gap in understanding these physiochemical parameters and how they might translate into a sensorial feeling, which is not tied to an adjective, right? Creamy or sticky, right? So I guess it does take a lot of manual observation, as well as just expertise in translating consumer feedback into negative positive experiences. And because AI, the adoption has not been, I think, universal. So, right, there are a lot of people talking about this AI gap where there's individuals or companies that maybe are not leveraging it to the best of their ability to not at all. For brands that have limited resources, what can you tell them in terms of how they can integrate AI into product development strategy?
Yeah, for me, smaller brands, of course, they don't have the same resources as big brands. But something that I can say is that you can actually use some great free and affordable tools, like even just mentioning Google Trends or ChatGPT. If you know how to talk to them and how to use them, you can actually leverage a lot of data coming from that. Even using the deep search, for instance, from ChatGPT now, it's great. You can actually proper and create a report just in second. Of course, it's not the same level of, months and months of deep research and going deeper into the subcategory level, but it's already a great tool.
Yeah.
And for me, small brands today, they have such a huge advantage in comparison to established brand. They can move really faster, they can test idea quickly, and they can really stay close to their community. So rather than thinking about what tool how can I use new tool, or what new tool can I use, actually, I would rather say, hey, be close to your community and create with them, and ask yourself question like, what are my consumer asking for or struggling with right now? And that data is coming from your own data set and your own database. So you have that info already internally. You don't need to look for something outside. And also, something that I will recommend is definitely track launches within your subcategory, within your space. This is definitely like super important, and asking yourself what's showing up again and again in your category. And for me, it's definitely leveraging your own data and plugging in with some API, maybe new tools that can leverage your own data, maybe do a RAG on your consumer reviews, trying to understand what are your consumers saying and what they are willing to actually have as next.
So it's interesting you talk about, the data set that you have within your own customer base. And I'm curious to understand a little bit if, as part of what you do, quote unquote, prompt engineering is something that's really important, right? So this was a phrase I recently was introduced to, but talking about using Chat GPT, right? How you phrase something is really, the output you're going to get. And I actually have a colleague who has a PhD in machine learning in AI, and that I explained to him the way I use Chat GPT is I talk to it like it's a lawyer, but I explain things like it's a toddler, right? And that's how I found like the greatest, output is really, kind of being like, okay, well, what would a lawyer say in response to this? But also, how would I explain this to a toddler? But in terms of tapping into your customer base, how important is it the questions that the brand is asking? I've used this as an example like so many times. I really need to find a new one, but when it comes to innovation, things like the ATM, right? That was not something consumers said, you know what I want? I want an ATM. Instead, what the bank had gotten feedback on was people wanted more access to their money outside of the hours that the bank works. And lo and behold, the invention of the ATM. And so when it comes to, yes, leverage the data that you have, but how important is it to be very thoughtful and engineer the questions that you're going to ask in order to truly find out what that need is?
You can actually think about it the same way you're doing consumer testing and consumer feedback. Because when you're asking direct question, this is not where you're getting the answer. You need to be more thoughtful about what you want to get from validating something or from understanding something, because what consumer need, what they say, it's completely different, right? So you need to get it there and create this kind of feedback loop to validate or not your own idea. And when it comes to creating a new product, you have to understand that when you are testing and talking to your consumer, you have to see if you want to test a formula, a concept, or a full product experience, because it's not the same thing. And you're not going to look for the same answers. And so you need to validate each step, like before going to your, let's say, one-on-one consumer testing, or if you're looking at answer online, you need to be clear on what you are looking for. So question like, am I looking for answering the question like, does the texture deliver on the claim? Or does the consumer really understand the product purpose, or how they are going to integrate in their routine? Because are they going to replace some of the product that they have with the one that we are creating internally? And for me, you have to be, let's say, open enough to be challenged and to the unexpected. Because sometimes you're going to see, you mentioned this before, but you're going to see a product that was launched with this idea, and then actually it was used in a completely different way.
Yeah.
Right?
I think was it with you? We talked about Drunk Elephant being, launched and adopted by a much younger generation than was intended for some of their products, which I think was not intentional. And I feel like that's a very good case study. And you also talked about, being close with your community. And I know we had a conversation that you talked about interviewing women in a certain market and global area to really glean insight. And so, AI obviously is a really good opportunity and even could be leveraged for conversations. But should brands also place value on having those intimate conversations, those one-on-one conversations with their customers, and not just, kind of electronic surveys to really understand their entire experience, both how they use a product, but also how it fits into, when they wake up in the morning to when they go to bed?
Yeah, it's definitely key. You have to be there with them. You have to understand them. And I think I mentioned, when I was working at LVMH and we had this business trip in China. And I think this is definitely something that the brands needs to do, is do one-on-one qualitative interviews with them. And sometimes just go there and watch them.
Yeah.
Like, don't overthink about it. Just go and see how they apply what they are doing, what is actually new. what is the problem that they are facing. And I remember, it was actually a cool story, because it was back in 2019. So I was working as an innovation manager at LVMH, and we had this business trip to China, and I was at the consumer houses, like at their places, in their bathroom, and looking at what they were doing and how they were applying their routine of makeup and skincare. And I remember seeing something that was spot on, and you have to go there without knowing what you are getting, right? This is like, you don't know what is going to happen. And I remember seeing that they were looking for a color that was exactly matching their lip tone, and they couldn't find it on like brands available in China at that time. And that was something that I spotted. I was like, there is maybe something going on here around the lip tone and the lip foundation trend that I called back then. And I remember that at the same time, also on Instagram, we had this huge trend around my lips but better, and also indie brands were launching kind of like lip tone color. Probably was Tower 28. They launched something like this back then, and so I was like, wow, there is something happening. We should be watching closely to the lip tone colors, and we had no clue about that. So we launched a research project around the lip tone colors worldwide, and it actually helped brands create nude collection. So it was really fun.
Okay, real quick. Raise your hand if you have dealt with active instability. If you have ever opened a jar of retinol cream and smelt an off odor, or noticed your formula went dark brown, chances are you are dealing with active instability. It's never fun when the formula you've been working on goes south and the due date is only days away. That's why we've encapsulated the trickier ingredients to work with so you can kick the stability struggle to the curb. From retinol to vitamin C, we make it easier to work with those ingredients that typically give you that 3 p.m. headache. The cellulose shell shields the active from outside exposure. Things like air and light that are likely to cause active breakdown, giving you the power to create stable and effective formulas without the trial and error. Ready to quickly create effective skincare formulas? Discover Tagra's Cellucaps line by going to tagra.com/cellucaps. So, have you encapsulated yet? Now back to the show.
It's very interesting to also hear, saying like, oh, well, it was also on TikTok. A number of years ago, I was at a conference and a woman asked me, how did you learn how to apply makeup? And for somebody of my age, this, the last generation before social media and access to the internet, how I learned to apply makeup was very much either trial and error or how I saw my mother do it. Right. And so when you take into account that generation, how does that change, the approach to, because, for instance, I remember going to a friend's house and we would all do our makeup and I saw them do something and I was like, ooh, you put eyeshadow on before foundation, just mortified because I'd never seen that before. But in terms of now there's a lot of focus on well aging as well as anti-aging. How do you think about consumer behavior and upbringing and access to information such as, tutorials and YouTube and TikTok that maybe my generation didn't have, and how to potentially create either products or consumer education around that? Is there these extreme differences that you're seeing?
I'm definitely seeing a difference between how, if we are talking about makeup, how makeup is applied for younger generation and older generation. Even though, honestly, on TikTok, I have seen great influencer with mature skin that are putting like the same a routine and makeup tips that they are seeing on TikTok, like kind of like doing viral looks around what is going viral on TikTok, and they are much more mature, and I love it. And also we are seeing more and more Gen Alpha. Maybe you have heard about it, but Gen Alpha is also influencing a lot parents in their purchase behavior and also how they apply skincare. It's not the other way around. It's not like your mom is teaching you skincare. Now it's like your kid actually teaching you ingredients and claims and how to put, this cream or that makeup or that foundation. So it's definitely a fun time.
That's funny. So yeah, my son is almost, well, I guess he's a little bit slightly before Gen Alpha, but I always joke that I've never felt more self-conscious than when I'm driving up to his high school to go inside. I'm just like, I've never felt more just like, oh my God, everybody's looking. I'm so self-conscious. And he is the one that honestly, my pants have gotten baggier because his pants have gotten baggier. And so it is true. I'm like, yeah, I totally see that. Our pants have in parallel gotten baggier. And so, looking at, so for instance, I recently watched a video that was, showing 14-year-olds in Japan, and their look and aesthetic was so much different than the 14-year-olds that, I see in the local high school. How much of microtrends are localized trends? So when you talk about microtrends in work that you may do for a client, how much of that is like, okay, well, this is US based, right? Like you can try to do this in Europe, you can try to do this in China, but like this is really not how microtrends work.
Yeah, it's funny because I just dig in this subject a few days ago. And for me, there is this thing of globalization of trends. And maybe a few years ago, you had trends coming from the regions, but now it's such a globalized and harmonization of trends. It's definitely something happening. Like, for instance, there is this look that is the drunk look that was huge in Asia for many years. So when you put like let's say red color blush under the eye for thinking like you are drunk. And now
geez, okay.
this is really precise. And I thought it would never come to the US, right?
You hoped it never would come.
And we are seeing brand like Patrick Ta or other makeup artists actually launching red brushes. And so this is actually, it's the drunk, but it's also a Japanese makeup look, really precise for younger generation. And now it's actually worldwide because those brands are actually adding red brushes as a new color. Or something really fun is imagining that when you are seeing something coming from K-beauty, like let's talk about K-beauty a second, because K-beauty it's huge in the US. Actually, Korean is the number one export now. It's bigger than France. That was to be the number one. Now Korean got the first place, but they were known for skincare, but now we're seeing more and more K-beauty in the makeup as well. And I have to say, what is absolutely amazing is that for me, the second wave of K-beauty is going to be about inclusivity, because in the US, for instance, on the Western market, people are wanting to try those amazing products coming from Korea, but we are missing the shades.
So given the diversity in demographics, let's say, in translating global trends to the US, which has a mixing pot of cultures and has a little less maybe homogeneity as maybe other counterparts in Asia, when we start to think about product development and a brand identifies a promising trend, what are the next steps in translating it into a viable product?
When you spot an exciting, promising trends, it's not a green light to go straight into development, because the first thing I always recommend is actually pause and ask a few questions. First of all, at the brand level and then at the product level, right? Because maybe this trend is already huge everywhere, but it doesn't really align with your brand value and brand positioning. So the question can be like, is this trend actually relevant to my brand and category as well as the audience? Also, can we own it as a brand, right? And not just feeling like and seems like chasing something. And also for me, the most important question is, what's the core consumer need behind the trend? And what does it mean, right? For instance, I'm seeing now that, the glass skin coming from Asia. So it's huge in skincare and has been a huge thing. It's in makeup also. But I have read many articles from pro makeup artists and professionals saying that they are forecasting that we're going to come back to the matte, kind of like a soft matte, velvet matte, because consumers, they love the glass skin, but it's not going to last all day long. And so they would love to have this feeling and this finish for skincare. But for makeup, we're kind of like going back towards before glass skin. So for me, it's always like analyze it at the product level as well, because you have to see if what is actually emerging, if this is a promising trend, if this is a new format, a new texture, a new claim that it's going to last at least for, a couple of years, and if there is a white space in the market. So you have to assess how this opportunity fits within your brand identity and a roadmap. And for me, not every idea needs to be disruptive, right? Sometimes the best idea, the one that are, let's say, more ROI heavy, are the one about like strategic update to an existing line. And other time it's a brand new category play, but most of the time it's just like, if you're known for hydration, don't reinvent the wheel and see what is happening in the hydration. Of course, in terms of TikTok trends, new routines, but also like product category intelligence. So new claims, new delivery, new texture, new ingredients.
And how do you align, earlier we spoke about how micro trends are very fast moving. How do you align some of that product development process, knowing that, it can take anywhere from 12 to 18 months to get a product onto market? Do you find yourself sometimes advising clients like, sure, that's what you're seeing, but in 6 months it's going to change. So you can't actually catch up with that?
So for me, there are two levels of trends that has different influence in the product roadmap and in the product development. So the, let's say, short-lived aesthetic trends that I mentioned, the TikTok ones, are great for inspiring anything happening now. So you're seeing, let's say, it's great for marketing, it's great for communication, it's great for thinking about it. But when we are talking about creating what's next, and of course the timeline is much longer, then you are taking a look at what is emerging from indie brands. And there you have a knowledge that is completely different from the online trends. And it's more like spotting signals before the rest of the market does and before it get mainstream. So to give you an example, it can be like now what I'm seeing in the concealer, let's say, category is the fact that people, they want to have dark cycle removal using concealer. So of course the macro trends is the skinification of makeup, everyone knows it, but how it translates to this specific category, and in this specific category the claims. And so analyzing how indie brands are actually talking about those benefits now, we can actually think about, okay, if we're going to launch a concealer in 1 year time or 1 year and a half, we should have those claims, right? We should have those positioning and those benefit. And something that I'm going to share also is how I was working internally at LVMH and Estee Lauder. Maybe can help you understand that. But we were thinking about like global innovation. And of course, looking ahead at like what's going to be the next big thing in 2 to 5 years, because sometimes we're also working on research projects. So those ones are much more longer before it get to market. And once we detected and validate the major shift, we will prototype that with the R&D. So prototyping, thinking about, okay, in this subcategory, in the hydration benefit for light cream and day cream, this is what's going to be next, because I'm seeing the signals coming from smaller brands, let's say indie communities, or also dermatologists, or it can also be aesthetics medicine, because sometimes you have like great thing coming also from the spas, med spa, and aesthetic medicine, plastic surgery. This is also great for inspiring your product roadmap. And so we will then build internal recommendations, say what brand will actually need this, which brand could adapt this trend, and would it be a great incremental innovation within this existing range for this specific brand? Because I had all the brand roadmap, and so I will already thinking about, okay, you guys are going to launch a new, let's say, terracotta at Guerlain, so I can imagine the next product for this category, and your next launch could actually have this claim or this ingredient, and so you have always to think about the brand DNA, your own roadmap, and product portfolio.
It's interesting you talk about the, looking into other areas. Is there ever cross-market intelligence that you use? So, for instance, I was in the biotech space specifically for cosmetics, so developing ingredients using biotechnology. And, kind of what we had seen was that it was, it had peaked in food. So that consumer willingness to see, biotech utilized for, replacements to meat, and that acceptance really kind of for us was the signal to say, okay, well, then maybe they're ready to adopt biotech-based ingredients. Do you sometimes look to other, whether it be food or wellness or even sports and fashion, to start to also validate or to think about the new trends or longer term innovation?
Yeah, totally. Because I think it's great to do cross-industry innovation and be inspired by what's happening on the industry, but we always need to think about this needs to be super actionable, right? So I don't want to just get inspiration for getting inspiration and giving inspiration to clients. More like this should be really actionable, and you should be using it in your roadmap right now. So of course, when it comes to validating something that I'm thinking about and I have the intuition of that is going to be the next big thing, I'm also taking a look, of course, at wellness, for instance, or the longevity. Now everyone is talking about longevity. So what is happening in longevity? Brian Johnson is going to launch a skincare line by the end of this year. So this is something that I'm going to be looking closely. Wellness, of course, workout. And for fashion, it's mostly for the collection, because you're looking at fashion mostly for the makeup colors and trendy colors. So I'm not really focusing on that part, but I know it has a major impact for brands when they have the creative director, for instance, internally, they're going to be looking at those trends. But when it comes to, let's say, cross industry innovation, definitely wellness, health. Food is a great inspiration for skincare as well. What is happening in food? What is the new ingredients? What are people talking about? What they are wanting to? So something definitely cool. A parallel that I can do also is the fact that we have seen a rise of like alcohol-free fragrances, and it was also coming from the fact that people are drinking less alcohol. They're being conscious about it. So you always see the dots here and there.
Yeah.
And it's great. And in skincare also, you get great inspiration and great information coming from. So when I talk about skincare, it's really like skincare product on a, let's say, premium market. You can get really, really good inspiration coming from the aesthetic medicine, plastic surgery, or med spas, facials, because maybe they are applying something, they are looking for a new routine, they are doing some new facial, and you can apply that to skincare as well, and imagine like new ways of delivery system, or way to do a proper, facial, let's say facial glow, have the same finish. Yeah.
And so, you take a micro trend and you create a product. How do you then test that, or what role does product and customer testing play into that, especially when, this may actually be something that the consumer and the consumer group you're testing on doesn't know they want yet?
Yeah, I feel like if you want to test an idea or a concept, or let's say something before going to product development, so something that has not a name yet and doesn't have the claim, but is kind of like a disruptive innovation within your category, you have to go there without having too much of expectation and be open to, the unexpected and being challenged. Because if let's say you are a mascara brand and you're thinking about launching something completely crazy, like eyelashes that are magnetic, or I don't know, something that has a glue, because you want to remove the glue, and this is just a concept that you have, and you want to try that out with consumers. Well, you better first of all ask them about all the problems that they have with the mascara and see if there is something that you can relate it to for the concept, and also see if applying lashes now, false lashes, you see problems in the area too, and then you can come up with your concept after to say, hey, is this replying to the problem that you mentioned? How are you feeling about it? And just be open that they're not going to use it the same way that you imagine, and maybe something that you feel right actually is wrong with them, and they don't see it the same way. They don't have the same sensoriality, let's say, eye as you. So you have to be, of course, open to be challenged and not go there just to validate your ideas, for sure.
Yeah. And so I always think consumer testing is very interesting because a lot of brands will use it in a way to like validate claims, right? But I haven't seen a ton of independent brands, at least, use it as a way to iterate, right? So generally, you've created a concept, you've had your small collection of people within the company, feel it, try it, and be like, great, that works wonderfully for me. And then you expand it to this larger group of 50 to 100 people. And then you just expect that you're going to get positive feedback. How much do you think that as part of being innovative, brands should really be open to an iterative process where you are using larger sets of consumers, not to validate a claim or for claim substantiation, but instead to get honest feedback about performance? Because we are, as a cosmetic, as a consultant, as a cosmetic formulator, I design for me mostly, right? Like I feel it and I say, yep, that has the aesthetic that this person wants. That's my opinion. And so, how much do you think there is value in using consumer testing for iteration and really evolving your product?
That's a good question. I feel like you have to go there with something that is almost ready, because when you're changing the formula, there is always something changing, right? And the approach that we were doing internally, both brands that I worked with, LVMH and Estee Lauder, we were going to test concept when they were ready, not ready for production, right? Ready for pushing that to brands and see if there was a fit in the roadmap. But we were going with the latest, let's say the latest version. And what we were doing actually is the amazing expertise of actually sensoriality design. And so being able to, have somebody that knows exactly how to apply and how to actually quantify and analyze the sensoriality of the formulas. And we were doing the iteration with them rather than doing the iteration with the consumer. And we were going with the final product to validate it or not, and maybe, change something, but all the work was done already before.
Awesome. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the future of beauty innovation. What upcoming shifts in beauty and consumer behavior are you most excited about?
One shift that I'm really, really excited about is how texture and sensoriality are evolving, in particular under the influence of Asia beauty format and K-beauty influence. There is this growing expectation that skincare and makeup should feel light, intuitive, immersive. And for me, this shift represents something much deeper in the consumer psychology, is the fact that we are moving away from the heart-eating, corrective beauty to the idea of fixing something fast. We are moving forward and towards something more supportive, emotionally driven beauty. And so for me, something that I'm really excited about is the fact that sensorial innovation is now just as important as ingredient innovation, and skincare rituals have become such a form of, self-soothing, and it's not just about the results, it's about how product make people feel. And for me, sensorial innovation is such a key and a strong core in the brand storytelling. And we have seen it with amazing texture like hairy finish or cloud texture or bouncy cream, or even more playful with the boba capsule cream, for instance the deep Vita C capsule cream coming from Medicube. And so I'm super excited about those new sensoriality coming from Asia, but not only, and also coming from the food and other industries as well.
Awesome. And do you continue to see sustainability and this idea of like conscious consumerism influencing product innovation in the next 5 years? So really brands being thoughtful about what they're launching and not just trying to, create a SKU for every single use in person?
Totally. Something that is used right now on TikTok is called Project Pan. So it's a challenge for a consumer to actually finish their own product before buying new ones. And I have seen videos, it's crazy because sometimes I forgot the amount of product the consumers have in their bathroom. And it's just insane. Like they have like walls.
Yes.
Walls.
I'm very guilty of that. I smiled because I was like, oh God, I should take place in that, because I this morning opened up my medicine cabinet and had like 2 or 3 products fall out, that kind of like full.
I know. It's the same here. I have to try so many products, so it's everywhere. But it's insane to see that the behind the scene, right, of those, let's say TikTok influencer or whatever, that they are always trying new product, what they have like walls. So there is this project Pan going on now, so they are trying to finish their makeup or their skincare. And for me, in general, the shift that is happening, of course, we have talked about clean, and it's definitely something that is there, it's going to be there, but they want more than just clean formulas. They want transparency. They want to understand where the ingredients come from, what that is mean. They really want to understand the inchi list. Some great startup, they are already doing it. So you can plug in this SaaS into your e-commerce. And so the consumer can actually read the inchi list quite easily. And a great initiative that I love is from Detox Market is the Climate Fact label. That is giving a consumer fully visibility, into the carbon, water, or plastic footprint. And we have seen, of course, the rise of waterless, solid formula, refillable makeup. Now it's everywhere. And of course, those are related to the product innovation. But when I think about the future, for me, it's definitely going towards the biotech, because we cannot use natural resources that much. We don't want to fall into the petrochemical system neither. We want to have something new. And so biotech is definitely the solution here. And claims like the percentage of bio-based ingredients or biotech active, for me, this is definitely the future for both actually skincare and makeup.
So I made a mistake in leaving the biotech ingredient development world. It's all right. It's interesting that is an emerging trend, because I do see it, obviously have always seen it as being a very valuable, useful technology. But at the current state, the cost it's very cost prohibitive. And so broad adoption of these ingredients that you create are relatively slow unless you have a considerable, budget or are selling at a higher level. But I'm really eager to see, how we'll drive costs down with scale and the adoption that I hope to see very soon. So to conclude our conversation, what are the upcoming opportunities or white spaces in beauty product innovation that you can share with us as advice, actionable advice that you would give a brand?
Yeah, something that I'm super excited about is the opportunity around the Matte Caution Foundation. So Caution Foundation, I haven't seen a lot in the US, just a few of them in the Western market in general. So for me, yeah, cushion are underdeveloped in Western market, and in particular in the shade range, and in particular for all the skin tones, climates, and the preference for the US market, but also Europe. And I have to say that the second wave of K-beauty, of course, is makeup, but it's going to be in particular in the inclusivity, because a lot of TikTok influencers are now asking for brands, they are asking K-beauty brands to have more shade range in their line.
Yeah.
So this is coming from the consumer side. And also, they are saying something like, this is the number one cushion foundation in Korea, so you better try it out. Like, there is something that is building up around it. And a few Korean brands are trying this in the US market. So we have Tier US and Parnell, EM Cosmetics. They are doing it. They are kind of like launching a larger range of cushion right now. And something that I'm feeling like it's going to be a success in the Western market is having a semi-matte or a luminous matte or a matte finish, rather than going for a cushion foundation with more of like a, let's say, radiant or even glass finish. So this is something, for me, a huge opportunity for brands, because we are talking about a huge category foundation, in particular in the US. So the value of the market is of course pretty high. And in skincare, something that I'm super excited about is actually something coming from the aesthetic medicine and the plastic surgery world, let's say.
Yeah.
And it's a new procedure called nano-needling. So rather than say micro needling, it's nano needling. So it's even much smaller. And of course, we are seeing a lot of, let's say, needle phobia, and more and more brands are thinking about it for having kind of like a no box or Botox in a jar, or needle-free technology. And the needle-free technology actually is going to be inspire a lot skincare, but the needle-free technology is already available in med spa in the US. So not only on, let's say, product claim, because when you're going to a med spa, you can get, let's say, injection with needle-free technology that are, let's say, injector that are needle-free. So you have those amazing injector without needles, and at the same times in the med spa, what they're also trying to sell you is the serum that goes with it, so that you can use between injection, and is also called needle-free technology, or bottle in a let's say Botox in a box, or Botox in a jar. And for me, there is something going on around the micro nano things that is going to inspire skincare.
Okay. Well, I guess this is a good plug for Tagra Biotechnologies, who does encapsulations and nano encapsulations for delivery of actives. We'll have to tag all the brands that you mentioned. I think that would be a very interesting thing. And going back a little bit to, the trends that you've mentioned for foundation, I'm just curious. So I recently, someone within my LinkedIn network posted an article about how rising global temperature, heat actually plays a role in aging. And then I read an article about the heat wave hitting, India, Pakistan area much earlier than it has in previous years, and they'll be under a heat watch, but seeing temperatures up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, which is very warm. How much of the changing dynamics in terms of global warming also have created microtrends where, people want foundation that is going to last through humidity and heat, right? For outdoor wear, to also providing protection against, the exposome, pollution, sun, to even, right, how heat may age the skin.
Yeah, it's definitely huge already. And not only in skincare, where we have claims for heat protection, and of course, protection also for reducing aging and the process of aging if we use those type of creams. But for instance, also in makeup, this is coming because skincare is also influencing a lot of what is happening in makeup after, let's say, a few 6 months. And so I've seen just Burberry, they launched a foundation with a stretch technology similar to a technology that they're using in fashion. So I love how they are doing the parallel and how they are doing the bridge between fashion and beauty, because it's a fashion brand, right? So they are using a similar technology that they're using in fashion, but in the foundation, and has claims such as, of course, sweat proof, long proof, but also protection against heat. And I also have seen protection against pollution and protection against infrared radiation. This is something emerging too. Yeah. Yeah, just reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm glad to help you out and see how I can inspire you in your product roadmap. That would be great.
Wonderful. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for having me and let me be a part of it. It's so cool.